David Foster Wallace's Infinite Jest is an exploration of the negative effects of entertainment on modern consciousness. And today we're going to talk about Wallace's ideas on how we've lost our freedom as Americans or as citizens of the West. And of course, Wallace is going to come at this from a very bizarre angle. And in today's video, I won't be really spoiling Infinite Jest other than stuff you may be able to read on like the back description that you guys probably already know about the book. And if you guys don't know, my name is Ian, and here on Write Conscious, we cover everything related to David Foster Wallace. In the playlist down below, you will find over 70 videos on Wallace, and that list is growing weekly. And so, one of the main plot lines of Infinite Jest is that something called the entertainment has been released. And if you watch the entertainment, let's call it a VHS tape, you will become so entranced that you won't be able to watch it anymore. And eventually you will die from just being so entertained and you just won't move. And you will die of starvation or dehydration or whatever. And one of the characters, who is a Quebecois, while talking about America, says that Americans can't handle this, and this is horrifying because if something like that existed, a vehicle, a medium for total pleasure, so many people would go down. There'd be lines if the film was being played somewhere. Everyone would actually learn how to pirate and illegally download things if that was available. And I don't know how many people we would lose, but of course, and I know that this is kind of a projected stereotype from Europeans in weak and collapsing nations, but Americans are a little bit more overindulgent, overweight, and not as conscious as maybe some other Western nations about our civic duty as citizens. And as we're about to hear from Wallace, when you are granted total freedom, it's a great thing, like thank God we have it, but it's really about what you do with that freedom and the choices you make, because we are given the freedom in America and a lot of countries in the West to just go crazy and do whatever we want outside of just, violent crimes. And Wallace writes on this when he says, quote, "But not someone outside you, this enemy, someone or some people among your own history sometime killed your USA nation already, Hugh. Someone who had authority or should have had authority and did not exercise authority. I do not know, but someone sometime let you forget how to choose. And what? Someone let your people forget it was the only thing of importance, choosing. So completely forgetting that when I say, choose to you, you make expressions with your face such as, here we are going. Someone taught that temples are for fanatics only and took away the temples and promised there was no need for temples. And now there is no shelter, and no map for finding the shelter of a temple. And you all stumble about in the dark, this confusion of permissions, the without end pursuit of a happiness, of which someone let you forget the old things which made happiness possible. How is it, you say? Anything is going?" And Wallace is 100% correct here. Just even the past 50 years have been a clinic on how to remove the axiomatic foundations of happiness in society and the negative consequences that follow. We are less intelligent, less happy, and less healthy than ever. And when you look at younger kids and teenagers and what's going on with them, it's worse than you can imagine. And that's not just me being older and doing what every other generation did, because what other invention in history is as revolutionary as digital technology? Name one. The printing press? That was nothing. The Industrial Revolution? That was nothing compared to what we are dealing with now. And it's in the hands of everyone. The iPad kids walking around at 3 years old, they're already in it. But there are two different sides of spirituality. One could say, no matter what religion you are, there is kind of the creation and flow of energy in the body, in the soul, whatever you want to call it. And that could relate about, how you live your life. Like I know, for instance, Mormons don't drink coffee and don't engage in sex outside of marriage. And so that gives them a sort of energy signature. And like Buddhists do certain things, and they are creating energy and making it flow around their body so that they manifest a certain stature. But the other side of spirituality is the use and management of that energy. What are you going to do with that? And that's where we have, in both areas we've really failed, but we've really failed in the use and management of our energy. And obviously because in America, our two religions are Puritanism and business. And those two are very wonky mindsets because they value the objective over everything. Things are very black and white in Puritanism and business. But for us in our internal world, it's very subjective. And when it comes to our own choosing and coming together as citizens and even being conscientious and transcending our own impulses, if you look at it objectively, if you read Atomic Habits and you listen to Andrew Huberman and you optimize your life and do all these things, most of the time it doesn't work. Look at your own life. How has that worked? But when you have a subjective drive, when you have a mission or you need to change for some reason, that is so easy if you are just forced to change because it's the subjective perspective. And it just works so much better in, dealing with personal matters. If you're dealing with business or reality or physics or gravity or driving a car, obviously taking the subjective perspective isn't recommended. But Wallace discusses this. Someone taught that temples are for fanatics only and took away the temples. And now, because we're spinning in a hyper reality of information and everything has been infused with irony, there is no real way to be able to find the shelter, to find the map. If you are maybe thinking about exploring Christianity, maybe you hear me telling jokes, maybe you see other negative criticisms of Christianity online, and that maybe could have been a path for you and been really beneficial, but you're just thrown off track. Maybe your path is something more pagan. But now yoga has been turned into Lululemon plans and meditation retreats have been turned by Netflix into a place where cults happen and weird stuff happens all the time. And so we're existing in this paralysis that is also infused with action. We have to take action out in the world and we want to do something, but we're also frozen. And that really is the main theme of Infinite Jest. And that is shown time and time again with characters. And I love his terminology, this confusion of permissions. We have permission to do almost anything, but most people do nothing. If you work 40 hours a week and sleep 8 hours a night, you will have 70 hours of free time a week after that. Over the course of 10 years, if you take 2 weeks off per year, if you used all of that free time, that's 35,000 hours of free time. And so even if you indulged and used even 5,000 hours of that, you would radically change your life and be on the way to mastery of something or even mastery of yourself. But most people, maybe in terms of personal development, every 10 years, they use about maybe a couple hundred hours at most of that 35,000 hours and just blow the rest of it. And Wallace writes on this further when he says, quote, always with you this freedom for your walled up country, always to shout freedom, freedom, as if it were obvious to all people what it wants to mean, this word. But look, it is not so simple as that. Your freedom is the freedom from. No one tells your precious individual USA selves what they must do. It is this meaning only, this freedom from constraint and forced duress. But what of the freedom to? Not just the freedom from. Not all compulsion comes from without. You pretend you do not see this. What of freedom to? How for the person to freely choose? How to choose any but a child's greedy choices if there is no loving, filled father to guide, inform, teach the person how to choose? How is there freedom to choose if one does not learn how to choose? And on average in America, we spend $10,000 a year per pupil. And we are not teaching people how to choose, how to figure out how to control your impulses. We're not teaching people how to not be violent. And there are levels to the game, because the other thing that happens is that maybe you do gain control of your life. Maybe you do have the freedom to choose. And I know a lot of people like this who are very successful and one could say pretty happy, but they're mostly choosing for themselves. And this is kind of the root of capitalism, right? Like if you are focused on your self-interest and everyone else's, then we are all competitive and do a really good job and everything thrives. But now in the land of corporate capitalism and with our mental health declining and all these different things, everyone up with the barbed wire, making only the decisions that make them happy and not focused on other people is very problematic. And I'm not talking about climate change or stuff like that, but I know way too many people who are very successful, make all their own choices, are in control, and they're just rude to their wife, their kids, everyone else around them. And choosing at that level, if you follow the path that has been put in front of you, and it's literally been built into our society. There are roads, there are stoplights, there are guides in schools. Everything is laid out for you to go get a job and go pay taxes. But it's all ego driven. It's all competitive. That's why they give you grades in school. I'm sure a lot of your jobs before that have sucked. It felt way too competitive. And you're like, oh my God, why am I doing this? And this is why the highest paying jobs, for instance, in sales are uber competitive. And all of that activates the malignant ego, because having an ego isn't bad. An ego is just the conglomeration of your entire personality. And if your personality and your person is very good and formidable, then awesome, you have a good ego. But the malignant ego, which is competitive, competitive in a bad way, and negative and greedy, never actually aligns with a deeper vision, because I talk about the imagination on this channel all the time. And we discuss where did these ideas, what is this creative ether? Is it are we tapping into some weird collective unconscious or God or some creative energy out there? Or are we just going within very deeply? And it doesn't really matter which option you choose, if maybe you're an atheist or you're religious or spiritual, but anyone who's actually meditated or contemplated knows that there's levels to that. And as you go down the levels, it's less and less about you, and it's more and more about alleviating suffering and helping others. And the choices you make, even if they are indulgent, should be at some level for a greater mission, should be for, like, if you're going to do something, you're having fun, you're having a great time, and it's the most effective and fun thing that you can do. But then the other choices should be, what's the hardest thing I can do? What's the most service-oriented thing I can do? What's the hardest decision or the best choices I can make for my family, even if it's hard? Like, I get comments all the time when I say, like, yeah, my kids aren't going to are going to have a phone. They're like, well, what are you going to do when you're older and all the other kids have phones and your kids don't? I'm not going to give them a phone. I'm not going to let a little teenager bully me. I have students who are in public school, and I'm going to homeschool my kids, who don't have phones, and they are 17 years old, never had a phone in their life. They don't have screens in their home. They are not weirdos. They are totally socialized, play sports. Everything is fine. They get to and fro, get picked up on time. They go to parties. It's crazy. It's possible. But you have to learn to choose to do that, or you're going to let society and other people make those choices for you. And that is really the point of Infinite Jest. That is where the addiction angles in Infinite Jest come in, like making a decision to make the choice. And that's where this other angle comes in, is that when you make too many choices, when you get too good at that, that's the whole tennis angle of the book, where people have dialed their life so down that every single racket swing, every single thing they do out in the real world is a choice that is serving tennis. And if you get too crazy with your choices, then obviously it can go really bad. So this is kind of a balance, an idea, and a philosophy that we don't ever really explore, because obviously everyone has subjective interests. And just like in writing, anytime someone tries to lay down rules, they're like, people are like, fuck the rules, there's no rules in art. And the same with choosing in reality. Like, how do you choose your life? Like, there's no rules, everyone's different. But there are some general guidelines, and I don't know them necessarily, but I'm sure there's 10 or 15 things that work for 99% of people that everyone should be following, that would help us get on the right path of kind of learning to choose and choosing the right things in the different aspects of our lives. And so thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for exploring David Foster Wallace with me. If you guys want to join my Infinite Jest book club, I already have 10 hours of course content done on the book. We are on probably page 300 right now. You will also get access to daily office hours where you can talk to me about reading, philosophy, whatever you want. 10 other book clubs, my David Foster Wallace course, daily podcasts, and so much more over on the Right Conscious Substack. The link to that is in the description below. If you don't have any money to support me, I understand. I have a free writing school down below you can join. And if you want to read more, I have over 300 of David Foster Wallace's favorite books and authors in a free PDF down below for you if you are interested. So thank you guys for being here, and I will see you in the next video.